Good morning, friends. This is Laura with Potpourri of Life. It's very early Sunday morning. I have not gone to bed yet. Part of it is we had the opportunity to visit with our grandchildren, and that was a gift beyond measure. So I'm kind of up trying to get things taken care of so I don't look so perky and refreshed as I do on Sunday morning. But I'm okay with that because the time I spent with my daughter and my grandchildren was priceless. So what I'm going to talk about today is it's going to be about, are we being led by faith? Are we being pushed to fear? Which means, are we being encouraged to thrive? Or are we being pushed to survive? So that's going to be the topic. But first, I'm going to make banana bread because I told you earlier today that I had some bananas that needed to get baked up. And that's what I'm going to do. So those are all mashed up, and I'm not using a blender. I'm doing a lot more by hand, and not because I'm afraid of anything, but I'm trying to get more exercise into my body, and I've been doing that for quite a while. And if I can build my arms up by hand mixing things, that's what I'm going to do. All right, so I'm using the Better Homes and Garden Cookbook. It's classic. It has all kinds of recipes. This has been around for years. Now this one's a newer model because my other one fell apart. So we got that one maybe about 20 years ago. I think my husband got it for me because I think he was getting tired of it falling apart. So what we're going to do is we're going to follow the recipe. I always start with the bananas in the bowl, and then I'm going to add other ingredients. Now this is regular flour in the recipe. I'm going to make it gluten-free, and my husband does like my gluten-free banana bread. But I'm using a different recipe than I normally do, but I'm actually making adjustments so that it will taste really good. So I am going to, we had it really, really cold in here. So before my husband went to bed, I was ice. I was literally ice. And I told him, I said, honey, I can't do this. It got down to like 66, 67. And my feet were ice, even with the 2 pairs of socks on. My hands were ice. And then he came in, I was on the couch because I was reading something, and he says, are you that cold? I said, I'm freezing, because I have a t-shirt on, I have this thermal shirt, and I have the fleece vest, sweats on, socks, 2 pairs of socks, and I had gloves on with a wool blanket over me. I was cold, but it could be because I was tired. I'm still tired, but I'm warm now because what we did was we hit the heat on, but once the temperature hit, I turned it off. He was in bed, but I just turned it off because it's comfortable now, and we both like to sleep when it's cool. So that's what we're going to do there. I'm going to get a little quick cup of water here. That way, as my throat is hoarse, I'm all set. So typically you add the bananas later, but I like to mash them up. I did not measure this. What I had was 3 bananas. Sometimes I use 4, sometimes I use 2. It's what I have on hand, and that's how I bake. So this one says 1 cup of mashed bananas. Might be a little more. So we're going to start out with 1 3/4 cups of all-purpose flour. And you can get this right in this book. So, and as we go into a time where there's so much uncertainty, I do highly recommend that you have cookbooks, at least with your favorite recipes, instead of depending solely on the internet. And having a classic cookbook is the best. You don't need fancy books to be able to cook, even gluten-free, dairy-free, whatever. So I am going to change the screen a little bit so that you can watch. So I've got those in there, the bananas. So I am going to add 1 3/4 cup of gluten-free flour. And no, I don't necessarily. I kind of just go as I can. Sometimes I don't measure. Ooh, I don't want that big of a knife. So this is gluten-free flour, and it already has its all-purpose gluten-free flour, So it already has the xanthan gum and stuff like that in it. All right. So that's done. And I'll put this aside. And then the next thing that I'm going to need is 1 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder. And I will share the changes that I make to the recipe. So this says that is 1 1/4 teaspoons of baking powder. The next is 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. Now baking soda is really nice to have on for a lot of things. I use baking soda for a lot of my cleaning. Like every week when I clean our toothbrushes, yes, every week, I actually put a little bit of baking soda in a cup. Then I put a little bit of vinegar. Put your toothbrushes in there and it cleans it really nice. But I also scrub them down so that we can, keep them for about 6 to 12 weeks. All right, so it said 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. So far, other than the flour, I'm just using what everybody would have. Now, I'm going to change it up a little bit by putting in, I'm not using regular white sugar, I'm using organic sugar. And typically I don't like to use sugar, but you know what, it's in a lot of our products and using organic makes me feel better. I thought about using monk sugar, but I decided not to. And partly because of the way my husband's funny. Let's just put it that way. Alright, so we're going to put in 2/3 cups of sugar. This is organic sugar. There's also coconut sugar I have used, but I'm going to use the organic sugar. I'm going to move this out of the way. So I got the dry ingredients in here, and so I'm just going to mix this right into with the bananas. Okay, the next ingredient is 2 eggs. Now when I do 2 eggs, I am going to be saving the eggshells, because if you've been watching me a while, you know that I'll wash the eggshells, and then once I have a bunch, I will boil those eggshells, and then I dry them in the oven at the lowest temperature. Mine is 170, and I just let them dry until they're done and they're nice and dry. And that allows me to be able to crush them down for calcium for now the chickens, but also for myself when I want to add calcium into my smoothies and so forth. So I'll be saving those as well. So I need 2. I won't be measuring big stuff anymore. No. Okay. So I always check to make sure my eggs are good. Even if it comes farm fresh, you just kind of want to make sure that they're fresh and they're not bad. That's 1. The reason I separate them all the time is because I've had the experience of a bad egg after I put the other eggs in. So I decided, nope, from now on, I will always break them one at a time before I put it into the batter. All right, the next thing it calls for are 2 tablespoons of milk. Now, because I would like to have some banana bread and my husband does not eat a whole loaf at once, I'm going to use oat milk. I would have used soy if this was a product that I was making just for myself, but he doesn't like soy milk, and he actually doesn't care if it's in baked goods, but I like to, because I just like to use oat for health reasons. Okay, so it says 2 tablespoons. So use your own choice of milk. All right. And so far we have everything in it that it asks for. Now I'm mixing this up and it's a little runny, so I could potentially add more flour, which I might do. But right now I'm going to just mix it up really good. And there's one more thing that I put in a lot of my baked goods, and I think that's why people like my cooking. I don't know, or at least my cookies. I always put vanilla extract, and yeah, cookies do call for vanilla extract, but I also put it in other baked goods, and it adds just a little something special. I'm not putting salt in it. The recipe doesn't call for it. How much vanilla? About that much. That was probably maybe a 1/4 teaspoon because it's not in the recipe. I just like to add it for a little bit of extra flavor, and I do that with a lot of my stuff. I still don't like how loose this is, so I am going to add a little bit more flour. And the reason that it might be a little bit runnier is because, if you recall, I just had like 3 bananas. They were large bananas, so it could have been more banana than the recipe called for because I didn't measure it by cup. So this is how I cook. I kind of cook by how things look. So this is about a 1/4 cup. And I'm just going to put a little bit at a time in. Until it gets to the consistency of what I would like for my banana bread. And it didn't use the additional full 1/4 cup. It might have used 2/3 of that. So that's all I'm going to, those are the ingredients. If you do not have this cookbook, you can look up online, Better Homes and Garden banana bread, and I'm sure you'll be able to find it. Or hopefully I've been sharing the directions slowly enough. Now, the recipe says to use shortening for the, let's see how much. Oh, they said to put a 1/3 cup of shortening into this. All right. As you can see, and what I'm using, this is not shortening. I forgot to put it in. I was thinking about doing the bread pan. So, what I use, I do not use shortening. I made lard. I got some fat back, and that's what I use for it because it's a lot healthier for you. And when I was growing up, I thought, oh, lard is awful, but it's not. It's actually really good for you. Now it says a 1/3 of a cup, and this is pretty moist in here, so I might have to bring back that flour. And it's not a full. I don't use shortening at all. I mean, I might if I have some. I think I have a little bit left in the refrigerator, and I use it when I make bird, not for the chickens, but for the birds. When we make suet for the birds, I'll use it for that. Oh yeah, this looks really nice. Now you can use, you know, if you don't have lard, if you don't have shortening, you can certainly use butter. I don't like shortening, but if you're fine with it, use that. I would recommend using real butter, even if you're dairy intolerant. But there are milk alternatives as well that I use. But I have not had any problem when I bake with butter. It's when I drink milk, it's when I consume things with milk, but not baked goods. And that was something my allergist said. When you bake it, it could change it for you. And so far, I've been doing okay on the baked goods. But I do make a lot of things without the milk in it. All right, so that looks amazing. Don't you think? I think it does. Now it does call for nuts, but since I'm making this for both my husband and I, he does not like nuts. And I think the way he shared it with me was when he was younger. Oh, I don't need to open that up because I still have some on the spatula as well as in that cup. So hopefully this will be enough. I think it could be more than enough to get this moist. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to turn this on. I'm hoping it's not too bright for you. Okay, so that's done. So now that it's all baked, see, the lighting changes. Now that it's all cooked, all mixed, I'm telling you, I'm tired. I am going to put it in the bread pan that was moistened with lard. And that's what I had left in the little cup as well as the spatula. And I had more than enough that was left over. I need to get a spatula. Wooden spoons don't take it out so quickly for me. Yeah, sometimes I'm not very patient, especially late at night. But I actually like baking at night because it's quiet. Outside, you know, there's no traffic. Sometimes there's traffic. I mean, it's Saturday night, so, well, early Sunday morning. All right. And the nice thing about a spatula is everything gets in there. And I've already preheated the oven to 350. Let's see, is that what they want me to? Yep, 350. And it's going to bake for 60 to 65 minutes. So you won't probably see it done, but I do want to talk to you a little bit about the topic that I mentioned while it's baking. It says to bake 60 to 65 minutes. I'm going to bake it for 55 and check it. And what I'm doing back here, my husband stopped using this jar of honey. Well, in the back of my stove, it gets hot. So I have this saucepan with water and it gets warm, and hopefully it'll melt the honey and I'll be able to use that in something else. And he uses honey in that tea blend that I made him, the respiratory blend that I made him. So that's what that is. So what I want to share, and let's see, I think I got too much light going on. Anyways, what I wanted to share is, I'm moving. So friends, while the banana bread is baking, I'm looking forward to seeing how it tastes. What I wanted to share with you is the topic of today is led by faith or pushed by fear. Where do you stand? And I realize a lot of you are not Christians, and if you've been following me, you know that I am. And even if you're not, I do encourage you to stay and not be offended, because what I share is not intended to offend anybody, because I can't share what's on my mind, most especially on my Sunday reflection day, if I can't be transparent in who I am as a Christian believer. So, are we living by faith? Are we being led by faith in the actions that we take? Or are we living in fear because of what's coming at us in so many different directions? Do you realize when you live in faith, when you trust in God, or if you... Now I know there's a lot of non-believers that, they're believing in the faith that things are going to be okay. Or what about those that don't have any of that? Are we living in fear that you're just surviving? You're just getting by? Now this can be applied to not only what's going on in society right now, between the virus, between the food, between the shortages, and all the wonderful things that are happening. It's not so wonderful. It can affect how we move forward in life. So I wanted to share scripture. It's Matthew chapter 7, verse 11. And non-believers, just hang on. Just listen to the words, because the Bible has a lot of truth. Even a non-believer can actually understand. Now this one might be a little hard to digest for those who are non-believers, but for the believers. So, if you who know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your heavenly Father give good gifts to those who ask him? One of the things that we do before we go to bed at night is we pray. We pray for God's intervention. We ask him to guide us through the challenges. And as I shared in my earlier video yesterday, we had a rough week. And we were praying a lot. And it was getting hard. And it wasn't a matter of fear. It was out of frustration because of how people were telling us how to do things. Sometimes, in order to thrive, you have to do things that are not common, are not approved by other people. That means that if somebody says, oh, you need to do it this way in order to make it right. I think back to when my kids were growing up. It was my job, our job, to teach them right from wrong, to teach them consequences from their actions. And then they turned 18 and went to college, and they were making mistakes, and my oldest got the brunt of it, but I learned, and I'm so grateful for her that she still loves me. But anyways, what she and then our next daughter did as well, they would always remind me, even after they finished college, I would say, do you really want to do that? They said, Mom, this is our life. We want to choose how we make the choices, because if it's a mistake, we can learn better. They didn't want to learn through mine or their dad's mistakes. They just didn't want to do that. So I had to think about it. It's like, they're right. Why should they? I need to let them get hurt. I need to let them struggle. Because even our struggles that my husband and I have done, we have come out on the other end in a great way. Do we have challenges? Of course we do. And with the way the world is, it's really very chaotic. And I'm not sure if my camera's going in and out. Looks like it's getting blurry. It's either because I'm tired or it's actually going blurry. So my apology. So I wanted to share some other stuff. one of the things that you're going to encounter, if you haven't already, is if you watch YouTubers, or if you're on Facebook, or if you're on anything, even watching TV. I don't know what's on TV because we don't get TV. But you might be getting a lot of information about how to preserve. And if you're following me, you're probably getting other links to the side about those who are preppers. I don't even know what kind of advertising comes on mine, because I'm not really signed up for specific ones. You get a lot of stuff, even in the advertising, where it's like, you need preparedness, you need this, you need that. And there's a few YouTubers that I really like, but I can't follow them right now, because every single YouTube that they put out lately is about, if you don't do this, you're not going to make it. And, I've talked to my husband about this. We can't be fearing everybody. And that's not going to be my job, because my husband and I are doing our best to prepare in the event of something horrible. And what's horrible? I don't know. I've always, like you've seen some of the things I've canned. You see that I try to have a garden. You know that I do herbs. Most of my stuff is in herbology. But I bake. That's how I save money. I try to have supplies on hand so that I don't run out. But if you ask my kids, I've always been that way. So one of the things that can get very confusing is you have homesteaders. They're doing, and you might consider me a homesteader too. I'm on a 1/4 acre lot, so I'm a small acreage homesteader. And what that means is that we are trying to do what we can without depending on others. Now, some are very much off-grid. We can't go off-grid because of our setup. We are connected to the electric power. We are connected to the water. We are connected to, different things. The oil company has to come. That's our source of heat. So, but there are things that we are doing to cut back. And there are things that we are saying, okay, we can do this. Just filtering my water, I don't have to worry about the water coming in. But we also captured rainwater to water our gardens this year. Well, about this time, we end up with barrels of water that are still full. And we filter them outside, and it's still fine. But before I'll take that water and I'll actually bring it in, and we're filtering inside, because within a couple of weeks before the first snow, or the first morning of freezing weather, we want those barrels completely empty. And so I'm kind of like saving some jugs and if I have to use milk jugs, I will, but I'm trying to use like heavy duty ones, sort of like what vinegar comes in. And we get some other products in heavy bottles like that. So that's one way of ours being our attempt to be a homesteader of conserving and being frugal. And there's a different, frugal is not being cheap. Frugality is making the best use of your resources. And it doesn't matter if you're wealthy or if you're poor or if you're middle class. We all can be frugal. You might discover that a lot of the very wealthy people, and I'm not talking about the elites. There are some people who are very wealthy, but they're frugal, and they're very careful of how they utilize their resources. Now, another thing that I want to share with you before I go on and talking about preppers and stuff, in 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 11, if anyone speaks, they should do so as one who speaks the very words of God. If anyone serves, they should do so with the strength of God, so that in all things God may be praised through Jesus Christ. To him be the glory forever and ever. Amen. Now, that is something that as Christians, that's kind of how I like to lead my life. Now, I can say that and somebody might say, oh, she's such a sweet Christian. Folks, I'm not always so sweet. I'm not always so nice. I make mistakes and I get upset. I like to think that when I get upset, it's justified. And, but that's the way life is. Sometimes things happen and we make mistakes and then we have to make amends. So let's get back to faith and fear. The fear that I'm talking about is not as if somebody comes to you and points a gun at you. That's a different form of fear. The fear I'm talking about is, are you afraid you're not going to have enough food on your shelves if we don't have food in the grocery stores? Or are you afraid because the prices have tripled in some areas, they've either doubled or tripled, and they're telling us it's going to get worse. Will it? I don't know. It's kind of concerning because as frugal as I can be, there's only so much I can do for frugality. So when you are afraid, what are you afraid of mostly? Are you afraid of everything? Because God does say He will provide. If He provides with the birds and, the birds of the air and stuff, He will provide for us. But we have to be attentive to our responsibility. And it takes a lot of work. So you can't just sit back and just say, okay, God, you provide. God provides to the faithful, and the faithful are the ones who prepare. In God's Word, He talks about preparing. Now, He doesn't talk about preparing in fear. He talks about preparing not only in having food on hand or water, whatever the case may be. He's also asking us to prepare our hearts. If our hearts cannot be in line with Him, then our faith is weak, and we really need to focus on that. And that's where all Christians can struggle. Okay, all Christians can struggle when things happen. My husband's car. I know I giggle about it, but it's like, okay, God, you really want to challenge us to buy a car, used car. I think I shared this the other day, or maybe I didn't. But I was trying to do this topic a few days ago, so it could be I thought I shared it, and I didn't. I just didn't get this completed video out. It's insane what they are charging for a used car. It hasn't scared me because we were fortunate to have a backup car. Can he drive his car? Yeah. Is it safe? It won't pass inspection because we need to do some work, and that's what my husband has to decide. Do you want to do the repairs, and they're not inexpensive. So we were kind of hoping we would get an updated vehicle that would kind of offset everything, but that's for another. But am I afraid? No. Now, there are some people that only have one car, and the car breaks down, and the fear enters their life because how am I going to get to work? I hear about all the electronics in cars and how the word on the street is it can be shut off. Like, this is what I call insanity, madness, and I'm like, could it happen? Absolutely. But really, they're going to go that far? And if they do, that is kind of unfortunate because, we're in a country of very strong people. And those of us with faith, we need to sit back and just say, no, we can't take this. How do you fight back on the madness? Well, you just don't participate. You don't have to go running and do a walkout or whatever it is you want to do, or petition or whatever. What you can do is you don't participate. And my husband and I, we don't purchase products from companies that push a lot of things. The only things that we have purchased, and it really, if we need an antibiotic or something, and I'm really struggling with Big Pharma. Not that they don't serve a purpose, but I also struggle with healthcare because Our primary care should be teaching people how to eat a healthy life, how to eat healthy, how to stay active, so that they can avoid a lot of serious illnesses. It doesn't mean that the illnesses will not occur, but they can be avoided or postponed if we were taught how to eat healthy. Now, when I was growing up in school, we were taught a lot of things. I mean, home ec was to teach us how to prepare our food, how to cook, and, how to sew. There was all kinds of courses. But it seems like nobody knows how to do this. Or, excuse me. But we also have a society now where both parents are working. So they're busy. They're busy so that they don't have time to cook, they don't have time to bake, they don't have time to do any of that. Or even be careful of the money they're spending because they make enough, they're just doing what they have to do. And there's a lot of people living on credit. Now, I don't know about you, but I do not like debt. And debt really makes me crazy. Not crazy at other people, it causes an increased anxiety. And anxiety is not healthy, and it can cause heart problems. It can cause a lot, mostly heart. And so we were in debt because of some healthcare issues for one of our daughters, and then we had some other health issues and stuff, and this was a long time ago. So it really put us in a bind. So we had to make some choices and changes so that we didn't have to worry about it, because the hospitals, I'm telling you folks, if you have medical debt, sometimes I think the hospital is worse than a credit card. But, we need the care. So that can be very fearful if you need health care. So there's different levels of fear. Now, I'm cutting back on a lot of my health care. I've stopped and I said, okay, what can I do in place of this? And one of the things, like with antibiotics for Lyme, I'm just using herbs, and I just take them. I do much better if I stay right on my herbs. But there are times where I want to give my body a break from what I take, and that's okay. The other thing is, we have foods that have a lot of stuff in it, and children are consuming foods with preservatives, food dyes, so many things, and it's hurting our children. That's a little bit of anger inside of me, okay? Because our children should not suffer now and then suffer later because of the food that we have available for them. Okay. I'm so sorry. It is a little late. So it's very hard. I see my daughter, she's checking ingredients all the time, and I don't blame her. And even when she was visiting today, I would give her, this is what's in it, and she would say yay or nay. And, most of the things I give the kids, they're fine. But I always run it by her. And a lot of times, she does exactly what we do. If I go someplace, I bring my own snack because I know what's in it. And so there are fears of this world. But right now, our country is leading us and pushing us to be afraid. We're afraid because there might not be any food. So instead of stocking shelves smart in the sense of, will you use this product? People are just going crazy because sometimes they can't find it on the shelf. Okay, so how do you offset that? You just basically decide, what do you want on your shelf? What do you want to eat? If you can't go to the grocery store and there's no food for a month, what would you want to eat? Not only that, Are you able to make a loaf of bread? Are you able to make biscuits? If you can't do a loaf of bread, but you don't mind biscuits, there's easy recipes, and if you can get Bisquick or whatever it is that you prefer to use, and I think there's a gluten-free one. I'm not sure. I make a lot of things on my own, and that other people making things on their own is scary, because it's like, I don't know how to do that, because they don't have the time or they don't understand. Okay, is this 3 strikes I'm out? So we got to decide, do we want to live by faith? I'm having a hard time with the way our government is trying to push us to believe. And to be quite honest, all of them fighting, toddlers behave better than they do. Toddlers make mistakes and they push each other down or they say mean things. But they can overcome and move on. They might push back, but you know what? There's resolution. But they don't put the fear into each other. They just say, you push me, I'm going to push you back. And they take care of the bully on their own. And sometimes the bullies are really tough. And that's what we have leading us, are a bunch of bullies. And that's what is pushing the fear. Do you know, you can live by faith and know that God's going to provide. But you can also overcome what they're doing by just not participating. You can not fight on social media. Stop putting people down. Stop making fun of these leaders, because the more attention you draw to them, the more they're getting the attention that they want. So it's just best not to do that. I mean, you do what you feel is right. There's some friends that are educating people as to where things are, because they're not afraid to tell the truth of what's out there. Because if you don't understand what's going on, yeah, you are going to be in fear. So don't participate. If they're scaring you about different things, the best way to fight fear is to not participate. Don't let it fear you, because we're going to ride through this. Remember when Y2K was here? Our churches were pushing us to make sure you have plenty of food on the shelves. Do this, do that. I couldn't stock our shelves the way other church members could. And I'm like, I mean, I bought a little bit at a time, but I've always been one who stocks my shelves. So, but the amount that other people were, it was like we were going to be in the cold times for the next year. And it could be that's where we are right now, but I don't know. So how do you prepare? You have friends, you make connections, and you work together. So you give, you take, you give, you share, you do whatever if things get bad. So how will it work out? I don't know. But if people who are afraid, that's all they talk about, is things of what they're hearing, instead of reading, listening, more importantly, voting. If you sit back on your hind hot, if you sit back and do nothing, then I realize that a lot of people are saying that the votes were stolen, and I won't share my personal view. So there's a lot of that going on. But that fighting has to stop. And if somebody is sharing that information, go and take a look at what they're sharing to further understand what it is they're sharing. Because there could be a lot of truth that you're not aware of. One thing that you can think about when you go to the primary elections is vote from your heart. vote from your head in terms of educate yourself as to what they stand for. If you have politicians that are fighting, do you really want them in office? Because think about it. The last two major elections, all we saw were bickering. And I'm like, oh my word. And I won't even tell you who I voted for because, frankly, it's none of your business. Am I happy with the choices I made? Yeah, I am. Am I happy with our leadership today? Not really. And it's kind of unfortunate. We do have some people in politics that are doing a good job, and they need to be commended. And those are the people you need to listen to, because they will give you more guidance as to what is right, and you might discover their viewpoints. And remember, when you go to the voting poll, you want to find the one that will do the best for you, but understand, like in marriage, you know, I may consider my husband the best match for me, but that does not mean we always agree. And so what you do is you make adjustments and you adapt and you speak up when things are not right. And that's what's going on here. We're not speaking up because people don't know that they can go to their representatives and stuff. And I'll be honest with you, I've done that a lot. And even our city government, I'm really disappointed because they're going to do whatever they want to do. And I'm disappointed because we pay high taxes. So refocus, take a deep breath. If you want to change, you can write a letter, you can call, and you can get involved. You can do more involvement with your local government. But if you want to write a letter to your politicians, you can do that. It's interesting, some of the letters I have received back, because they're a form letter. There's no heart in what they write back. Okay, they're really busy. But if they're representing the citizens, it shouldn't be a form letter. It should be something that addresses what you wrote. And that's what I find disheartening. You can make phone calls. You might have to wait for a phone call to be returned because they're not in the office all the time. But there are things that you can do. I know that one person wrote to our governor, and he made an adjustment. He made a change, and he wrote back to that citizen. That's how much he cared. Now, I don't think he's going to write back to everybody, because some people are just, okay, how do I want to say this without being so crass? They're just whiners. They just want things their way all the time. So sometimes we can't make everybody happy. I can't always make my husband happy, and he can't always make me happy, but we have to come to some common ground so we can understand. And that's what you need to do, is understand what's out there. You know, if you want to thrive in this world, I mean, this stuff is going to pass. It could take 6 months, could take a year, it could take 5 years or more. Now, I know a lot of people say if we get somebody else in office, well, quite honestly, we do need somebody else in office, because as much as I don't like his political views, he's a sick man. And I actually pray for him. And I know a lot of people might say, but you don't even like him. It doesn't matter whether I like him or not. There's people I don't like that treat me bad. I still pray for them. Because as a Christian, that's my job. And I have a lot of compassion, because there's one part of him that is like, wow, I really don't like you. I don't trust you. And then I see the other part of some real sickness, not in the head, but sickness of his health. And so I do think that he should not be voted in again, because he needs to step back and rest. Now, I'm not saying that in a bad way, because I haven't met or even heard of somebody that I actually want in office, because nobody is taking the time to speak with clarity and with integrity. We don't have that. And I haven't met the person yet or discovered them through the voting and what's available to us. I'd like to do a write-in, but, you know, there's even somebody that had run for president, and I listened to him. He has a show on Saturday night, and I really like him. But even him, he is making fun. You know, I think when you're in a public situation, it's really not right to make fun of people. And that's where I have a hard time with how politics is run. We insult one another. Is that really what we want? Do we really know the truth of that person to understand that you find it okay to make fun? But it's not just in politics, folks. It's also with how people have treated one another during the Mass, how people mistreated one another. And it really bothered me then. And now I've just stepped back and said, okay, God, this is yours. Whatever is meant to be will be, for my life, for my husband's life, and our children. I have to trust him. I've been worried, and I'm very concerned about my grandchildren's future, because how we vote is going to make a difference. How we behave. We're the adults. Stop gossiping. Stop. Do you know those who fear do a lot of that? It's easier to talk about others than to be accountable for ourselves. And in God's Word, He truly, truly encourages His people not to gossip. Now, folks, I don't want to go on, but I think we need to. I'm hoping that I wasn't too repetitive, because I really want you to really think about your choice. Are you being led by faith? Do you want to thrive? Do you want to live life with fullness? Providing for yourselves through whatever means you can. Or do you want to live in fear? Do you want to be married to your job because you have nothing else? Do you have nothing to back up on? Do you want to live so that you don't survive? Are you afraid of surviving? We're all going to get through this. So refocus your mind and tell yourself, I want to thrive. Refocus your mind and say, I don't want to live in fear. And step back, take a breath. You can do it. You can do it. And that is the beginning. If you're not a Christian believer, still, stop living in fear. Trust your instinct. My preference is to trust in God, and I kind of hope that you would consider that. But I'm not a pushy person. And when I worked in a lamp store one time. I was going to college. I had a main job, and I worked there for extra money. And I was selling lamps and stuff like that. And somebody came in looking for something. It was a piano lamp. And we had a music store in the mall at that time. And I said, oh, I know what you're looking for. I said, but you won't find it here. You'll actually find it down at the music store. I said, you go down there and you talk to so-and-so. See, I already had connections down there. So I said, you go and talk to them. Tell them you're looking for a piano light. And I said, they have them. So they went, and then I didn't know it until the next day, but that woman came back and told my boss. She says, your worker, Laura, she did the best thing for your company, and I will be back to shop here because she had integrity to not try to sell me something I didn't want, but to tell me where I could go get what I wanted. And because of her, I will be buying more product from you. That's what we need. I'm not saying I'm wonderful. I'm just saying that's the integrity we need in how we live our lives. If you can't do something, you share with people how they can take care of it. So, friends, I truly pray that we as a country, as a nation, and as a universe, worldwide, that we can come to some common ground of unity. And we can't get there until we stop being afraid of what they're telling us, until we stop falling victim to what they're telling us. We need to stand up, and we need not to be afraid. So folks, I hope you have a very blessed day. I hope that your hearts are full. I hope they're full of joy. And I hope that you have a very prosperous week. May God bless you.